My research is mainly about perception and performance and how these two variables interact with each other. So the participants or the population that I'm looking into is Taiwanese University students who have had over 10 years of English education, and they've entered university, but they've not been exposed to any study abroad experiences or native speakers immersion environments. So I'm looking into these group of students, their self-efficacy beliefs with regard to their linguistic knowledge as well as their spoken fluency, and how these kind of self-efficacy beliefs can place an impact upon their spoken fluency directly and indirectly through, so like its mediating role in between linguistic knowledge and spoken fluency. So that's the main structure of my research is that there are three variables. There are spoken fluency, which is the dependent variable, and linguistic knowledge, which is supposedly directly influencing the dependent variable, and self-efficacy beliefs. So I'm going to look into their direct impact and its mediating role. So if that makes sense. The background to this research is that out of my own personal observation of university students back in Taiwan, I think a lot of students, they are very, very proficient in all domains of English language, except for speaking. And a lot of people attribute this to the lack of practices, basically, in school education throughout the 10 years, from the age of 8 until the age of 18. Although they've been learning English consecutively, but they do not have any, I guess, sufficient opportunities to practice English. And a lot of parents and practitioners, they're worried about this. So a lot of people send their children to like cram school, to study abroad or summer camp, whatever it is. But there are also a group of students who are not probably financially capable, or if they're lacking parental supports, or for all sorts of reasons that they haven't been exposed to this kind of resources. How can schools offer an opportunity within a limited curriculum? Like, how can they change the course? How can they change the teaching approaches to be able to help the students? At least they can meet, like the speaking domain can meet the levels of other domains. And that can be done through increasing their self-efficacy beliefs. So speaking of methodology, my research combines quantitative methods and qualitative methods. So for the quant part, I have a self-efficacy questionnaire, a vocabulary test, a grammar test, as well as a speaking test. So those are the tests that I use to kind of test students' linguistic knowledge, so vocabulary and grammar, both in productive ways. So we know that vocabulary knowledge are different aspects to it, and I'm testing their productivity, so whether they can use vocabulary effectively, grammar as well. And the speaking test, I was the interviewer, and I invited them to do a monologue on a topic that they must be very familiar with, which is their university life in the past year. And also the self-efficacy questionnaire, it's a combination of open questions and semi-open questions and closed questions. So that the purpose of that questionnaire is to help me as a researcher to go into depth as to see the sources of self-efficacy beliefs, because I'm using Banderas theory, and Banderas, this theory, the core of it is self-efficacy, and his main claim is that students' confidence or perceptions, or i.e. self-efficacy, can and overpower their actual competence. And so what I do is that I not only test their self-efficacy beliefs, but also to look down into what source actually influence their self-efficacy the most. So there are 4 sources, and I look into mastery experiences, so their past success experiences, and social persuasion, so other people's comments on it, and whether these people are credible or not, that plays an influence, as well as modeling experiences. So like students, they relate to peers or people of, like they regard of the same level, but even a bit higher, so that they can learn from these models. And the fourth one is, of course, affective factors, so like anxiety, motivation, and stuff. The very interesting finding is that, firstly, self-efficacy beliefs not only indirectly influence the impact of linguistic knowledge on spoken fluency, but also, secondly, it has a direct influence on spoken fluency. Namely, when I control for all the actual knowledge, students' self-efficacy beliefs in their vocabulary has a significant impact statistically upon their spoken fluency, meaning that when students actually believe that they can use vocabulary very effectively, they can be able to speak more fluently, regardless of the level of their vocabulary. That's a very interesting finding, because you would kind of think that there should be a relationship in between vocabulary knowledge and vocabulary self-efficacy then, if that's the case, but there isn't significant correlation in between those. So it's just fascinating to really see like perceptions actually has an impact on like your performances. And also another interesting finding is that the source among all the four sources, mastery experiences is the most powerful one. So students' past success and how they interpret that success really matters, because all the highly fluent students with high self-efficacy, they interpret past experiences, they interpret success and failures as kind of like a motivation. So both are kind of like a driving force for them to do more about their spoken fluency. Whereas students with lower self-efficacy beliefs, they usually view past success as an indication of merely their preparation. So they don't think that they've made progress. They only think that, oh, I've prepared enough, but I'm not capable of more challenging tasks. And also, these students, they interpret failure as kind of like an important reminder that I'm not good. And so that's just interesting, because there's a correlation between their efficacy and their self-efficacy and their performance, and you can see that kind of pattern emerging from your data. So I think the contribution to theory is that because there are very, very scarce literature on this topic, so I think one of the very important contribution is that it echoes what Bandrew says in his social theory, is that self-efficacy beliefs or students' perception really does impact their performances, academic performances. And past literature has been done a lot on maths, but I think this can also be applied to language as well. And the second one is, I think future literature can also try to look into the sources of self-efficacy beliefs, not just like the construct itself, but how it is constructed. So like different sources to that construct. And finally, I think, because my research is of a very limited scope, it only targets Taiwanese university students. It only has 40 samples. It only look at L2 English proficiency and spoken fluency particularly. So there's a lot more to be done, and a lot more can be kind of developed, different aspects of this research.